Hi, today we'll be discussing a number of topics debatable both within America and internationally. First on our list is criminal justice reform in our own country. Just a couple facts to start us off about family life with criminals. The Center for Restorative Justice Works found that regular prison visits have shown to lower delinquency rates in the children of incarcerated felons. 60% of these parents are locked up over 100 miles away from their kids and their families. Now, as I previously stated, it's said that frequent visits, be it on a weekly basis or even monthly, are shown to have significant benefits for the emotional stability of these kids. And they desperately need it as well. Presumably coming from broken homes, this is a huge help for them. But with 60% of their parents locked up over 100 miles away, frequent visits are almost impossible, if not very, very difficult to begin with. Leanne, do you have any thoughts on the topic?
Yeah, I think that it can be really stressful on the other half of the family that isn't in jail. Like a single parent could be raising kids by themselves while their spouse or father of the child is in jail far away from their kids.
That's absolutely right. What do you think we could possibly do to fix this problem?
I think they may be able to make it mandatory to have inmates put into jails that are within a certain radius of their kids if they're really young or if they're still growing up.
That's a good idea, actually. The only problem with that, another couple facts, is that 7 million people are moved between different prison systems every year in the United States alone. That's a lot of money put towards transportation for the inmates because it requires a lot of manpower and a lot of equipment. And it also is very taxing on not only the inmates themselves having to adapt to different environments all the time, but it also causes a lot of trouble for these families because it's tough to keep track of someone that you're not really in touch with as frequently as you may like to be. Another 700,000 people are released from prisons every year as well. And if they're not allowed to stay in touch with their families because they're so far away or for whatever reason, this could add even more complications to the pile. So this is definitely something that we're going to have to look over again soon. Next topic, Leanne.
Okay, the next topic is legalization of physician-assisted suicide. And it's only legal right now in the United States in 4 different states, and they're Montana, Vermont, Washington, and Oregon. And Oregon was the first state to legalize it in 1994, and it goes way back into the 1990s. There was a doctor named Jack Kevorkian, and he was known as Dr. Death, and he helped at least 130 patients end their lives, but they were usually terminally ill. Okay. So do you think it was right for him to help them? How do you think that made their families feel?
I think there are 2 sides to this argument. I think on one side of it, these people that are terminally ill are likely suffering a great deal in their final days. And I wouldn't blame them for wanting to end it, for wanting to just get it over with because they know it's coming eventually. I'd rather be in control of it. But on the other side, you have to think about the families of these people. Now, these families, without a doubt, want some closure with the relative that is terminally ill. And if this person decides to end their life before the family is allowed to talk to them, it could be very devastating to that family. So I would say that it should be illegal, or it should at least be restricted so that the family does need to communicate with the person that is terminally ill, just to make sure that everybody's comfortable with it when they go.
Okay.
Our next topic is pretty popular in the last couple of days. That is the recent recovery of Malaysian Airlines flight MH370. This flight departed from Kuala Lumpur on March 8th and disappeared, which sounds pretty crazy, but sure enough, it just disappeared somewhere between Malaysia and Vietnam is where it lost communication with ground control. A lot of search crews were looking around the shores of Vietnam right after it disappeared because they assumed with the way the tides move and currents and such that it would end up there. They actually found a door off the coast of Vietnam, but it ended up not being a part of the jet they were looking for. The Boeing 777 jet carried 239 passengers and 12 crew members. It's a lot of people to get lost, especially in this day and age. Obviously, with terrorism and recent events that were connected to that, One of the first things people pointed to was a potential terrorist attack on the plane. But two Iranian gentlemen that were traveling together on this flight, uh, supposedly they had forged passports, and officials were originally believing that these passports were forged in order to get into Europe quickly, or were eventually going to be used for that purpose.
Yeah.
So what do you think about this plane? What do you think might have gone wrong with it?
I think either it may have been hijacked by the two men, even though it doesn't look like it points to that because they were probably just immigrants trying to get over to Europe, but it could have been, they could have lost control, but I think it's a little suspicious that they turned off their radar thing.
Yeah.
And yeah, there's a lot of things that could have gone wrong, but a lot of countries are investigating.
I agree.
Yeah.
Okay. I think that wraps up the Malaysian topic. What do you have next?
Our next topic is restrictions on advertising for children. With recent spikes in childhood obesity and the decline in test scores, companies like McDonald's and TV stations like Disney and Nickelodeon should restrict their advertising campaigns aimed at children. I think that the more they aim it at children, the less focus they get on school. And I think, especially with McDonald's, they're trying to pull kids in to eat unhealthy food, especially like younger kids because of the toys.
Absolutely.
How do you think they can change that, their advertising?
I agree completely with that they should be restricted. I think with the recent spikes in childhood obesity, as you mentioned, and the rapid decline in outdoor activity, these companies need to, if not be stopped completely, they need to be restricted. I think the whole idea of baiting kids into McDonald's with toys is really not fair to them or the parents, because it really leaves the parents with no other ultimatum than if you don't get your kid this toy, they will be very upset and disappointed with you. So I think one of the first steps could be McDonald's losing their toys. I'm not sure how the justice system would go apart doing that, but it should be something that needs to be done. And television advertisements should also be regulated. I'm not too keen on that topic, but it needs to be done because the more time kids are spending inside watching TV, the less time they're outside really developing themselves and becoming better people.
Okay.
I believe that.
For our wild card topic, we have a story on a park in Chicago where a 2-year-old boy was cut by razor blades that were glued to the equipment on the playground. His father noticed the cuts on his hands and reported it to the police, and so the cops went to the park and they looked around and found 12 more razor blades glued to the park equipment. So do you think now parks should be more cautious of what's going on there? Or?
I do. I agree. Actually, I think that, especially in that area and maybe more densely populated areas, regular searches should be done. If not by actual police officers, then at least it should be suggested to parents. Like when you go to these parks with your kids, make sure you walk around with them for a little bit first, just to make sure. Like it might not happen again, but in case it does, you'd rather be safe than sorry, especially with something as dangerous as these razor blades that could do very serious damage, especially to a child that might not recognize it.
And that young.
Yeah, exactly. Another thing you could do, if you're a parent of a kid that likes to go to parks, just show them a bunch of dangerous things, like show them what a razor blade is and explain that it's a dangerous thing, that it could very easily hurt them, just so they know to stay away from it and to tell an adult. And that would probably save a lot of people.
Okay.
Thank you.